Hey, hello everybody, and welcome. My name is James Dearsley, and I am the founder of the Digital Marketing Bureau, and I'm here today for the latest iteration of the Midweek Marketing Mix, which is my bi-weekly show talking about the latest news in the digital marketing realm, sort of bringing you the best guests, talking about the latest news, about everything that's going on out there. And despite the thing, I tell you what, if we get through this show today, it's going to be a miracle, given the technical issues that we've got today. I don't quite know why we've got it, but the gods are not looking down on us favorably at all today. So look, we're just going to go through some of the guests that we've got on, just to sort of bring you up to speed with where we got. So we've got the lovely Cara Wood, who's joining us from Sync Media. For, I think, Cara, this is your second, isn't it right? Is that your second show now coming in?
Yes, James, and thank you for having me back. And really nice to meet the other panel guests, Mark and Thomas. I've been looking forward to this, so just thank you for having me back.
It's a pleasure. You're probably the most prepared guest I ever have on the show, ever. It's a complete joy.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I'm up against some pretty heavy, hitters in the industry, so I don't want to show up with nothing on my plate. So, but anyway, so thank you. It's a nice compliment.
It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure, and it's always good to have you on. So, Cara's going to share with us some of the latest in the world of sort of digital news and what's going on. And there's some pretty exciting things going on there. Talking about sadly some pretty sad events, which is a real shame. And then we've got probably some superstars in here as well. I feel a little bit humbled to have on Mark Schaefer. So Mark's coming on for the second go. So Mark, thank you for joining us once more. Really appreciate that.
Happy to be here as always, James.
And as I was just reminding him behind the scenes in the green room while we're talking about these sound issues, the last time Mark came on this show, he had the worst bout of man flu that I think any human being could possibly conceivably imagine.
Oh. But I persisted. The show must go on.
That's show business.
Honestly, Cara, I don't even know if you could quite comprehend the level of pain that Mark was possibly conceivably in. Because what was worse, he didn't have anyone to take care of him, stuck in a hotel room. It was...
Well, social media is all about pulling the curtain aside. So, if you're sick, that's all part of the charm, I guess. Was it charming? I didn't see that show.
No, I doubt it. I doubt it was charming. That probably wouldn't be the word for it.
Should we say snotty? Is that the right word? Sniffly? It was, yeah. But it was professional. Let's put it that way. It was highly, highly professional because the show went on, and that was it. So it was a cracker. And that was when we reviewed one of Mark's recent books, The Tower of Twitter, coming out from a re-release. And the reason for having Mark back on the show again is actually his latest book coming out, which is The Content Code, which, having read it, fantastic. And for me, one of the big things about all this is that, you know what, we're all content creators in this world. This here is part of a content strategy that I have within the business. And you know what, for me, it's all about content plus one. It's about the advanced nature of content and having the ignition, the spark behind what you're doing and how you're differentiating your content from every single other being, whether they're marketeers or just general business people. And that's a fair thing to say, isn't it, Mark, in terms of summing it all up?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I could argue that this is the most difficult time to be in marketing. I've been in marketing for 3 decades, and it used to be pretty straightforward as far as how you can maneuver in marketing. And now everybody's kind of figured out the content thing, the social media channels, and it works really well. And it's getting very, very flooded. The amount of content is literally exploding on the web. So I've spent the last year and a half really obsessed with this idea about what do we do next? How do we maneuver as marketers with our content to cut through this incredible information density and rise above this noise to be the signal? And that's what the new book is about.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna read one quote, which, I mean, I'm pretty old school on this, right? I've got my Kindle version here. There you are. You can see it all there, right? I love my Kindle version, and I make all my little notes and my highlights, and I categorize my highlights, right? I have my pink highlights and my yellow highlights, depending on how serious I like those quotes. And then for the purposes of this show, I decided to print out the ones I really wanted to mention, because that's how cool I am. But I'm gonna read this one out because I think it's particularly pertinent in terms of all of us out there who are sort of content marketers, and we'll sort of go into this in more detail a little bit later on. But I mean, Mark was mentioning So in the history of marketing, there have always been new frontiers enabled by technological breakthroughs and visionaries who act first. What's the next era of innovation to pioneer when the implications of content shock become unbearable, right? The content code is one of the answers to that question. The book starts where great content ends. There are enough books out there for touting the need for amazing content. It's a given. Christ, I mean, we've all read those. But epic content simply earns a seat at the table today. The real power only comes to those who can create content that connects, engages, and moves through the network through social sharing. I mean, that for me sums up the very nature of why everybody out there should be reading that book.
I hope so.
Mark writes well.
Yeah, he does. He does. So look, let me. I'll move on because we're going to come on to Mark a little bit and sort of get into the very nature of swear words as well. The fact that he talks about you've got to be badass now, and you can't say that in an English accent. That's the problem. Me and Thomas are a bit screwed, right? Badass. We can't do that, Thomas, can we? Badass doesn't really sound right.
What does it mean?
Exactly.
What is a badass? Is that good or bad to be one of those?
It's got to be good, right? Mark, is it good?
It is according to my according to my book. It's good.
So it's a good bottom, is it? Is that what it means?
We shall compare later. Why don't we do that? There we go. Because one of the things that some of the other Hangout hosts on there, they will say, what does Mia Voss always say? What's on the bottom? Also, she says it far better than I do. What's on the bottom? And everybody has to stand up and turn around because at the end of the day, we only ever see this bit of everybody. It's a bit strange. But anyway, look, we've had the final guest. I've sort of prolonged this for far more than normal. The last guest that we've got on is a debutante, Thomas Power, who I have been following pretty much from the very first day that I ever got involved in the world of social media. And Thomas, and there's Penny, so Thomas and Penny Power. Now, this guy's CV runs the length of a LinkedIn page. The amount of non-exec directorships, the amount of companies he's got involved with, founded, co-founded, built, sold, it's phenomenal. I mean, how many of them are there, Thomas? Is it 7 non-exec directorships now? Pretty phenomenal sort of background. And then equally, it's like a power couple. I mean, the surname's Power, so there's Thomas Power and there's Penny Power. And I want to just make sure that I've got this right, Thomas, because I'm not sure if I have. So Penny was made an OBE, so it's an Order of the British Empire, back a couple of years ago. And if I'm right, that is specifically for her work in the marketing world and digital marketing per se. Is that right?
She's actually the first lady to receive the OBE from the Queen for social media in the United Kingdom. So it was a very special day. It was March the 7th last year, James. We were very touched to meet the Queen and receive the honour for social media. I mean, it's quite a shock, really. It was one of the best days of my life.
It's not surprising. I mean, I don't know, Cara, Mark, if you're familiar with this whole CBE, OBE, MBE thing. I mean, it's literally like the biggest deal. I mean, I almost want to sort of get down and bow at this power couple's feet. It's
very exciting. I saw the picture on your Twitter profile, and I was hoping that you were going to go into a little bit of detail and tell us about just a little bit about that day and that meeting the Queen.
Come on, go for it. Thomas, tell us all about it because it is a pretty cool thing.
It was a very special day. Penny received an email from the Prime Minister on the I think it was the end of November 2013. I think it was the 30th of November 2013, telling her that she'd received this award and if she would like to phone and confirm acceptance. So that's quite unusual to receive an email from the Prime Minister, which I thought cynically, oh dear, is this more spam? But it wasn't. And then she phoned, it was confirmed, and then you then appear in the New Year's Honours List, which is published on the 31st of December, appears in the newspaper on the 1st of January, and you're in the list with all the people receiving their awards from the Queen, and then you're invited to, in this case, Windsor Castle, to receive the award from the Queen. So we hired a chauffeur, Jiv and Mercedes, to take myself, Penny, her father. Interestingly enough, Penny's father received the George Medal from the Queen's father, George VI, in 1947. So there was a sort of a kindred connection there, father and daughter receiving awards from father and daughter, which is quite amazing. We took all the children, and it was a spectacular moment in our lives. I put it really next to our wedding day. It was quite truly remarkable, very, very special.
Thomas,
And the actual moment is about 60 seconds, so it's not you're not sitting down for coffee and tea with the Queen. You get about 60 seconds. You get that official photo that Cara mentioned on my profile, and that's the one photo you're given. You're not allowed to take selfies with the Queen. You're not allowed to take your camera or phone into the palace. So.
Can you imagine trying to
roughly 60 people receive an award in 60 minutes, so it's one per minute. And she queued up. I think she was about 10th or 11th in the queue. As I say, it was one of the best days of my life. And then we went and took about 30 people out for lunch to celebrate afterwards in Windsor. It was magical, truly magical. Great. It's great to get recognition from the Prime Minister and the Queen for teaching and making social media a friend to everyone.
Absolutely. Well, I want to just bring in a couple of things here. So, Thomas, this is really for you particularly. So we've got Kath Dawson comes in. Ways at Thomas Power for, what have we got? The mildly sentimental about the good old Academy days. So, hi, Kath. Thanks for joining us. And funny enough, that's...
very sentimental days for those days. They were great days.
That's what it was. I mean, that's how I started to sort of understand where you guys came from.
Waves back. How do I waves back?
Okay, so let's just have a look, see what else we got in here. So Lee Rickler's joining us. I don't understand here. Look, enough of the sympathy. We all get colds. Get on with the show. I've got to leave soon. Yeah, thanks, Lee. That's nice of you to mention that. This is Mark Schaefer with man flu, which I imagine is like superpowered man flu. So, let's be all forgiven here. Okay, let's just sort of move on with the show because so hang on. Here we go. Look, we got Roxanne. Hi, Roxanne, you're in. Hi, good to see you again. Thanks for coming back in here. We've got a little here. And Dave Pipe, the audio is a little bit choppy here and scratchy, so you'll have to apologise. We've got a few technical difficulties behind the scenes. So, Dave, but thanks for joining us again, as always. Now, let's just get on with the show, because basically, this is Midweek Marketing Mix. This is all about bringing you the latest news and questions and queries and comment about what's going on out there in the digital marketing news, as well as having like a special guest show, which is why Mark is on here talking about his latest book, The Content Code, which we'll come on to sort of midway through. So what I wanted to sort of kick off to start with really is looking at the latest news surrounding the very sad events that have happened out in Nepal. And this is partly because the events that we've seen have sparked off an amazing reaction within the social media spectrum. And this isn't just from the outpouring of grief that we've all had. This is from the very nature of the platforms themselves and how they have all contributed to helping this very sort of difficult time and helping everybody else out. So, Cara, without further ado, why don't I just sort of bring you into this here as well, and just maybe you can just give us a little bit of a flavour of everything that's going on out there in terms of all these different platforms and how they're helping.
Sure. Well, I think I'll start out with just sort of taking us back to 2001. When September 11th happened, and then there were those very powerful images of people pinning pictures and notes to bulletin boards, which were all over mass media, and that was sort of the only way that families and individuals could sort of, reunite with family members that were missing. Sort of fast forward now, we have Google that implemented Person Finder. So I think on Monday, they were up to 6,200 people had registered, trying to find people, saying that they were okay, letting people know where they were at, or just news that they had on certain people. Mark Zuckerberg, he created something on Facebook called Friend Finder. So anyone who was actually in the area, Facebook sent them a message and said, "Are you okay? And do you want to send messages to people?" So right away now, Google and Facebook sort of have come on board, and they've sort of taken away that archaic way to connect people And I know that the Red Cross is utilizing this. Doctors Without Borders is utilizing this. Uh, the government in Nepal, they're also utilizing Facebook and Google information as well. They're providing Google and Facebook with their own information that they have about people. So there's a lot of information sharing, which is really nice. And so it's allowing people who aren't directly affected to also sort of help out and participate in trying to reunite families and offer help and services in any sort of way. So that's one factor of what social media is doing. There's also on Twitter. I mean, Twitter instantly lit up with people sort of saying, please donate, please help. The agencies that were looking for help were announcing, Canada has donated this much. Sweden has donated this much. So they're also, letting people know what stage they're at with regards to sort of money and donations and what's happening. So it's a really nice free flow of information.
It's good, isn't it? And I think, am I right in saying that, if I'm correct, Facebook as a platform, or was it Facebook, who said that for every dollar that is donated, they will then match it up to the value of 2 million, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was Facebook. Mm-hmm.
So doing some pretty awesome, I mean, that's real sort of corporate social responsibility stuff on there going on. And there's some very interesting stuff going on with LinkedIn as well. I mean, not only have we got Twitter, Google, and Facebook all kicking in with some phenomenal sort of responsibility here, but we've got LinkedIn kicking on with, which I think some really, really clever applied uses of stuff. So what's going on there, Cara?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn has partnered with something called the Digital Humanitarian Network. And this is an organization that basically has compiled volunteers and technical communities to interface with them. So it basically manages networks of technically trained volunteers around the globe who can be activated to help with regards to like data analysis or map tracing, people who have skills in crowdsourcing, volunteer management. So LinkedIn has partnered with them, and what they're doing is LinkedIn is reaching out to people who have the skills that they need in Nepal and actually saying, would you be interested in helping out if you're in the area? Or if you're in sort of a smaller network area, can you help us out? So, I mean, that is fascinating. And they started in 2011, and that came out of the Haiti earthquake. So members of online communities started to cooperate and share crucial information resources with agencies on the ground. So that's fantastic. And then the other one that I wanted to mention is there's a lot of people who are putting information onto maps, so not crowd maps, but cloud-based maps. And so if they're in the area, they're just updating what they're finding, what they're seeing, are roads broken or houses down, etc. So that's really fabulous as well.
It's incredible, isn't it? Because it's a mixture of how digital marketing, the power of the internet, for that matter, and everything is coming together for the greater good of humans. Which is when you collect enough people, enough data around a central point, you can use that for many different things. Some good, some bad. And this is a classic example of doing everything right for it, which I'm so pleased to hear about. So that's fantastic. And
yeah.
What I've just done is, for those of you who are regular watchers of this show, you'll find that we use the Showcase app. So actually there's about 3 or 4 articles there, all curating pieces, all about the latest in the efforts to help people using those 4 platforms that we already mentioned in that Showcase app. So for those of you who are watching this, certainly watching this live, you can access them now. For those of you, I'm just going to try and click onto this so you can actually see this. For those of you who are watching this recorded, I'm just putting this one here. If you click on this little button here, be part of the conversations, just click on that and you'll get access to all the links that we're referencing today as part of this part of the show, because there'll be an awful lot of stuff to sort of get on there. Now, one of the other things which, and sorry, Cara, because we had all the problems sort of behind the scenes here, one of the other big bits of news which have been happening this last week is that of the Google Plus space with collections. Are you familiar with that? Have you seen and had a little play around with it yet?
Yes, I've checked it out, and I like it.
Putting you on the spot, of course.
But thank you, that's great. No, I'm really enjoying it because it's just another way to filter information and just to sort of get to exactly what you want. I mean, I'm interested in technology and culture, so some of the people that I follow they have created their collections, and so I can just go in there, and it's not necessarily a community. So a community is a group of people providing information. I'm now following, specific collections. Almost feels a little bit like Pinterest, but anyways, I like it. I'm interested to see where it goes. But I was also sort of doing a little bit of reverse engineering and wondering why Google implemented it. So I'm trying to figure out what information they're trying to collect from us creating these collections.
Well, what I'm just going to do here is I'm just going to share the screen here. So for those of you who haven't or are not aware with Google Plus per se, it's just important that you understand exactly how this is all working. So I'm just going to go onto the Google Plus platform here for a second and go onto the general homepage, which you've got here. You can access these new collections if you haven't done already. If you go into your left side navigation bar at the top here, and it'll drop down into this little new tab which is opened up here called the collections. When you go into here, you get this option at the top to have, I'm just going to get that out of the way so it actually puts it all on there. You've got collections which you can create, so you can just create your own collections here. And this is basically, as you said, Cara, it's a collection of articles that you are particularly interested in. So, for example, I've created one here on property porn, because it's a bit of a bizarre starting place, isn't it? Virtual reality marketing, which is one of the other ones for me, and I'm a beekeeper, as many of you will realize. So, and what it's just doing is that when I'm posting general articles, I can basically put them into these categories. And what a lot of people have been saying is that this is all about refining everything that you're posting about. So it's just a very clever way of Google Plus really, I suppose, coordinating what you're posting and how you're posting it out. So it's like you're posting, there's an argument there about whether or not it's similar to communities, for example. But it's not, is it, Cara, right? It's totally different.
I think it's similar to communities at all. It's completely different. Like I said, it feels a bit like a Pinterest-type application, because you're basically pinning all of the types of articles and interests that you have into one place. But it's a little bit more if you're not.
It looks very similar to Pinterest, and one of the things Kara was asking about what's backwards engineering. I mean, one of the things you're doing is you're essentially tagging the content. Of course, it's associating you with the content, but it's also tagging the content. So that might be interesting.
Yeah, the thing which I particularly like about this, so there's two strategies. Having played around with it now for a little bit, and I quite like the refinement with it, is there's two things that have been said. Is that, number one, these are indexable in search. So not only are your posts indexable, but also your collections are indexable. So it's almost like having your own bespoke landing page, bespoke to your interest. So that is something which, from a marketeer's perspective, we should all look at that as brand and say, well, hang on a second. Because obviously they're available for brand pages. No, they're not available for brand pages. But as a person within a profile, you can start building your interests around that, curating all of the articles, whether yours or other people, within your own branded collection, which Google will start indexing. So there's certainly an aspect on that. And the other thing for me, from a strategy side of things, is how many times do we find articles which we absolutely want to read? And there's so many different ways that we can either pin them onto private pin boards, or we can put them, there's a big Google Plus strategy of actually posting them into your own circle with only you in it for future reading. One of the things here you can do is you can actually set up your own private collections, which means you can just post into that collection and then use it as a distributor or a filter if you think it's worthy content to then share on. So there's an awful lot of...
That is a great tip, James. Thank you.
That's all right.
You did that, creating an own private community, put your stuff in there, and then you can send it out. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and for me, it works. I mean, obviously, if Google Plus is your mechanism by which you work by, if that is your preferred platform, it works. Because one of the problems that I've often had is that Pinterest, at the moment, is certainly not one of the platforms that I use more than anybody else. And so I struggle with it because I don't want to pin it there and then forget that I come back to it. So in this, it allows me to pin it within my collections and then share it from there with all the linked accounts that I have off of my Google Plus stuff. And those of you who are here, and Thomas, I'd like you to pick that up on, because I just saw a chat coming in from Thomas. Does anybody use Google Plus anymore? That's the classic thing, right? Can't believe you started that, Thomas. As a quick, come on, Mark, do you like Google Plus? Do you use it, or do you, like me, I tend to use the power of Google Plus and take it outside of Google Plus as a platform? which is an interesting one. Oh, just going to unmute you there, Mark. There you go, you've unmuted.
I'll use this anecdote. I teach graduate level college classes at Rutgers University. It's a major national university in America. So I teach, let's say, between 30 and 100 students a month. All of these are more or less mid-level marketing managers at big companies. Could be insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, manufacturing, service of some kind. And every class I kind of get take the pulse to see who's doing what are they involved in, what are they looking at. And so I'll say, well, who's on Google Plus? Out of 30 students, maybe 3 will raise their hand. And then I'll say, how many have used it in the last week? And all hands go down. And this has been a pattern for years. So I can only use that as an anecdote that here are people who are involved and engaged in marketing that really, it just hasn't gone mainstream. So that's, and it's just been consistent for years. So, there's a lot of data out there, there's a lot of numbers out there, what do you believe? But anecdotally, it's not being used in a profound way by marketing leaders.
And the problem is with this show is that we could talk for hours about who is and who isn't using Google Plus, and that's the problem. And do you know what? I always stick it and say that for me it's a primary platform, but not as a primary platform to engage, because that's where Twitter comes in, which we can talk about again for hours. For me, it's about taking the power of what Google Plus gives you and using that power in other areas. So, for example, for me, collections, if they're going to be indexable by search, happy days, there must be an angle to that. Hangouts, for me, it's not about Hangouts necessarily in Google Plus as we are here, or through YouTube. Yeah. It's about taking the power of those Hangouts. And, this show, and I haven't even mentioned it today because we've had a few little issues. The fact is, I stream it through social media today. I stream it through our website. We can lead go to our website. Yeah. Really taking the power of the platform outside of it to make good.
I think it's a win for Google in a lot of ways. It achieves a lot for Google. There's a tremendous amount of great technology there, but I don't see companies saying, just screaming, follow us on Google Plus. The Google Plus, the Google Plus case studies and victories in a branding way or a corporate way are seem unusual. So that's just my view of where the world is right now.
Yeah, and do you know what? I find it hard to disagree. Again, from a business perspective, I just look at Google local in search, knowledge graph, connect it up. But do you know what? That's where it comes down to, and it comes down to a branding aspect of circle building, and that is showing in Google search. But it's only as good as that will be. But whether or not it's a place to network and bring on business, most likely not. Yeah. So it's a difficult one. But anyway, look, we can argue about all of that because there's a lot of people very, 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 very pro Google Plus. There's a lot of people very, very pro not Google Plus. I sit right on that fence. I just want to bring in Kat's comments. It's brilliant. I created my first collection about my cat. That's right. Okay, what have we got?
In the spirit of social media, it's got to start with cats.
It has. Cats or dinosaurs. I find there's an awful lot of room for dinosaurs. Right. Okay. Well, look. Let's move on. So what we got? We got social media, and we talked about the growth of the whole tragedy in Nepal and how social media sort of come together and helped out. We got this work with Google Plus and the collections world and how they've done that with some interesting use cases. Definitely worth having a trial, setting up your own collection, looking at cats, and obviously other ones as well. Let's sort of move on a little bit because what I'm very conscious of is I've got two guys here and both of them are particularly influential around the world of influencer marketing. You'll find an awful lot in Thomas's world on Twitter, and we'll come on to this, the whole Clout 70 strategy that he's been putting towards at the moment, which I think is a fascinating use case for looking at clout. We've got Mark Schaefer, who originally wrote The Art of Influence, which was all about the world of clout and cred and all this sort of stuff, which is how I learned about all of this sort of stuff. So what I just want to bring in here a little bit is Thomas, would you mind going into a little bit of detail about your world around Clout70, the hashtag, what your mission was to do there, how it's integrating with WhatsApp, because there's a really good, interesting case study there of how you've been using WhatsApp to sort of bring your audience and audience building and curating this audience. And I want to bring that in with Mark as well as to how he feels this world of Clout is particularly interesting. So perhaps could you introduce it, Thomas, as to what you're doing there with this whole Clout70 stuff? If we're hearing you all right. Are we there?
Yes. So I was working inside a banking project. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, spot on, you're fine.
You got me okay? I was working inside this banking project here in Canary Wharf with one of my clients, and I noticed a lot of the staff were working outside of the firewall using WhatsApp private groups. And I thought, so they're not working inside Outlook, they're not working inside Yammer, they're not working inside Yammer or Chatter or Jive, they're working inside WhatsApp private groups because they said it's easier to get things done. So I thought, well, I need to have a WhatsApp private group of my own. So on February the 1st, I launched a WhatsApp private group around Clout. And I thought what I need to do is launch a group that's hard to get into. And we all know how hard it is to get to a Clout score of 70, extremely hard. And so I thought that would be the qualification to join. I then tweeted that out, and I couldn't believe it. Within about 3 hours, there were 50 members of this WhatsApp private group who did have a Clout score of 70. And I thought, well, that's weird. Where did they all come from? The WhatsApp group then exploded to 98 members of Clout70 enthusiasts like me. Pretty sad, my wife thought at the time, but you know, you have to have somebody has to be a Clout enthusiast, since it's a Marmite brand, loved and hated. So we then launched a Clout70 dinner and invited people to come for dinner. 14 or 15 people came for dinner, and then we had a Clout70 hashtag, we had a Clout70 WhatsApp private group, and then we had a WhatsApp, and then we had a Clout dinner. Then we launched a document, what you see there, the Google Docs document that I've shared in the chat. I hope you can see that.
Yeah.
And then I got a phone call from the Telegraph saying, what's all this about a Clout70 group? And then it became international press. Then it was a huge article in the Telegraph. Then I asked all the people in the Clout group to share the Telegraph article to promote the group and to promote the... It became one of the most shared articles on the Telegraph website. 3,500, 4,000 shares, staggering, really. So what started out as a little hunch has now become a network of 8 private WhatsApp groups covering all sorts of things: cloud, Internet of Things, social selling, meditation in business, and has become 8 dinners. And now there are 2 dinners a week in London for these 8 WhatsApp groups. So a very weird, unusual experiment where you go from an idea to a tweet, to a group, to a physical event, to a newspaper article, to 8 groups and 8 physical events, just on the basis of a hunch. But people love them, and the groups have, since February, have now posted 50,000 messages. So they're now posting more than 10,000 messages a month across the 8 groups. And the gentleman I'm doing it with, Duncan Gledhill, and I, and the 2 ladies we do it with, Lisa and Heather, Lisa Patton and Heather Hoggart, are equally stunned and mesmerised by the fact that people want global awareness and local intimacy. So people want big, small. They want giantness and they want smallness at the same time. They want physical events. So if you like, it's a cocktail of big, small dinner mixed with newspaper interest, which has now got people asking me if I can run managed private members groups on WhatsApp for clients, which I wasn't trying to achieve because I didn't know that was there. But it seems that people want small, intimate, private networking groups on WhatsApp where they can teach and learn, coach and remotely support one another with physical events, whilst they're also having their big chats on Twitter in public, or Google Plus, or Facebook, or LinkedIn, wherever else they chat. So the whole 3 months has been quite remarkable, really. Truly remarkable.
I must say,
quite surprised.
From being a part of it from day
now
one.
Now it's on. It only started in February the 1st, though, James. And now it's 2 dinners a week and 8 groups of 98 people each.
Just shows you, doesn't it? Now, I have to say, I think
you can only have 98 people in a WhatsApp private group.
On this call, just so you're all aware, because I think Thomas is getting me quite a lot after I'm getting him, just so you're aware in case there's any problems with this. But what I just want to pick up on that, and perhaps, Mark, if we wouldn't mind bringing you in here a little bit, because obviously we've got 2 books now we can talk about here. We've got The Return on Influence, which is obviously one of the former books which I've read and had a fascinating thing. And then we've got Thomas's use of WhatsApp, which I find fascinating, because one of the reasons I wanted him to come onto the show was talking about this whole WhatsApp thing, but equally I love to sort of bring him in with you because of the whole Clout 70 thing. So what is this telling you about this Clout 70 movement? Because you've got some Lee Rickler saying, ha 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 ha, oh sorry, you're being serious about Clout in the comment stream here.
Yeah. Well,
I
I think it's been quite frustrating for me, but I understand the backlash about Clout. And by the way, I just want to say that I loved everything about Thomas's story. I mean, as I was thinking about how are all these parts come together. The beauty of social media is that it opens the door. I mean, and Thomas talked about this need for communion, for physical connection. And that's the awesome opportunity for social media. It starts out as weak relational links, but still people have that hunger to network and really get to know people. So I love the way those dots are connecting. Another dot for me that connects through his story, I think Clout people get very emotional about Clout because, and look, I moved 180 degrees in my view of Clout. When I started writing the book, I kept an open mind. I tried to approach it scientifically, but at first, I didn't like the idea of Clout because you're being rated in public. It feels icky. It feels a lot like being in high school or something. But what Clout really tries to measure, let's take out the word influence. What Clout really measures, it's a relative indicator of a person's ability to move content. And that's what we see through Thomas's example. So he says, oh my gosh, this thing has exploded. Of course it is. Because you have people, a group of people, even 98, those are people that can really move content. These are, and it goes through their network and beyond their network. That's what Clout really measures. And I think it doesn't measure how influential you are at work or at school or on a Google Hangout. But what it does measure is your ability to move content, aka buzz. Can you create buzz? And look, that's a big deal. So I think there's something there. I think people that dismiss Clout out of hand are not looking at it really in a non-emotional business kind of way about what does it do, how can it be used, and Clout is a very blunt instrument. But sometimes all you need is a blunt instrument. We have a lot of blunt instruments in marketing. If you need a relative indicator of a person's ability to move content, Clout is just fine. It's not perfect, but it's just fine.
It's an indicator, though, right? I mean, one of the reasons why I was so keen for you guys to come on here, and it measures trends, and there's an awful lot of information there. At the end of the day, it's quantifiable. One of the things that I picked up, and this is where I'm mixing your two books in here, Mark, which I think it relates really well with what Thomas has mentioned, is this whole generation of the alpha audience. You mentioned an awful lot about building an alpha audience, and I'm going to quote it again because I think it's a particularly good quote. This is incidentally in my pink little highlighter, right? Because it says it's important to me. It says you need to amass an alpha audience, an elite and engaged tribe at the top of the social food chain, the bedrock of your business.
Yes.
Google research shows that these most loyal members of your audience are more than 250% more likely to transmit your content. And basically, Thomas, in a nutshell, what you've done is you've just, by bringing this whole #Clout70 group together, by literally having both private and public content and ways to communicate, you've basically fueled, and you've got this rocket fuel. You've got what Mike calls the ignition behind the very nature of what you've done as a project to fuel everything, and everybody's doing it. I commend you for that. Absolutely fantastic case study.
And I think this is the real. I mean, it really. I love the way all the stories are blending together here, because what we're seeing through the power of Thomas's case study is exactly what's at the heart of the book. The economic value, the economic driver of social media is not content. It's not an audience. And that's where all the discussion is today. Content is not the finish line. It's the starting line. If the content doesn't ignite, if people don't share it, if they don't engage with it, if they don't see it, then you might as well just lock it in a safe. So so now you kind of connect the dots. Well, who are the people that move content? It's people with high clout scores. Again, take out the emotional word of influence. But let's look at if the economic benefits of content and social media come through transmission, we better be able to find, as businesses and organizations, people who transmit our content. We better love them, nurture them, find as many of them as we can, because they are an elite group, and as I said, that is the bedrock of our business. These are the people who are really creating value for our businesses.
Absolutely. I'm just going to pick up on another point, because I think it's very important on this. Again, because it brings in the book that you've done, and I think what Thomas has demonstrated with that little case study there, which I think is a magnificent one to look at. The whole point of consuming content. The reason why we need our content to fly is because, and this is something that you put in the book, which is back in the 1920s, we were averaging about we went from 2 hours to 4 hours a day when radio kicked in the 1920s. Television and the internet and gaming all captured. By 2011, Americans are consuming more than 8 hours, so it doubled from 2 to 4 to 8 back in 2011. Because of the mobile revolution now in 2014, we're now able to consume up to 10 hours per day of content, and that could be crappy content for all we care. But it's how do we filter that stuff out to actually fire it up and go? And this is where, I mean, I like the word influencer. I like the word influencer because it's brought an entire facet of market together, which is you have to look at your influencer marketing now. The amount of times we look, and I know, Cara, you're particularly passionate about this. You've done a fantastic article recently about using Nodex within influencer marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, to identify influencers, and then use those influencers to find creating relationships with them, but creating honest relationships with them. So I think that's the part that often people forget, is they can identify who the influencers are by their clout scores or by the content they create. And how do you then elevate yourself so that you can participate in conversations with them, so that they will engage with you and that they'll possibly be interested in helping disseminate your content. So what I like to sort of talk about is create friendships with these people. Read their books. Ask them questions. So don't just sort of jump in and say, you're an influencer. If we connect, I'm now going to sort of elevate my position. It doesn't work like that.
No, absolutely. And I'm just going to bring that in, as I mentioned, because I know if any of you are out there Cara, if you can share me that article that you've written about that or are writing about it, I'll make sure that that goes in the stream because, as Thomas just said there, yes, Nodex, Lee Smallwood, it's a very, very good platform for doing exactly this, which is finding those influencers, finding the people who, as Mark has said, the classic definition of moving content. You want to find people who are moving content. Create good content, find those people to move it all for you. One question really I've got to bring in for you, Thomas, is, and there may be a slight time delay for this, so excuse us for this, but where now? I mean, bearing in mind, February the 1st is when you started hashtag Clout70. Where are you going to take that? What's the plan with that? Because that is getting so big. Where now with it? Where can you take it?
James, you do know it was an accidental outcome. And Mark gave me a lot of credit there for a genius plan, but Mark, it was actually completely, utterly accidental. And it's nice to know I did the right thing, but I didn't plan that. So for you to ask me the future of an accidental plan that worked is very hard to answer. But what I can say, we did discover that a WhatsApp group can only hold 98 people, so I didn't know that. We've then created, James, another 7 groups and 7 dinners, and they're now pretty much all sold out to the end of the year, those dinners. So that's fascinating, that you can run 2 dinners a week in one city across 8 groups using WhatsApp. So you can now charge people to come to dinner when they're not paying for a free online group. So in other words, people will not pay for something online like a group, but they will pay for something offline, which is a group, albeit they're mainly paying for dinner. It's not really a for-profit system that Duncan and I are running. But in answer to your question, James, we've been contacted by a number of cities around the world who would like to replicate the 8 groups in New York, in Boston, in Dubai, in Sydney, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in San Francisco. So it might actually be a simple licensing or franchise model based on Twitter, the hashtag, the WhatsApp groups, and then dinners with a local posh restaurant provider in the relevant city, and individual group leaders and professional facilitators like Lisa and Heather, who make such a good job of keeping the group nurtured. And they do evictions. If you, a little bit like Big Brother, Who Goes, Clout Decides, they kick people out and remove people who aren't active and supportive of the group, which I find fascinating, that they're bold enough and brave enough to do that. So I think it might end up as a city franchise, James.
There you go. I think it's interesting. And one of the things I want to bring up on there again, and I'm going to link this back in with what you say, Mark, which is, and you provide some very valuable case studies in the last 2, so the Tower of Twitter, and you reference it again in this book about the very nature of taking these relationships offline, and the very virtue of you might have a very engaged audience online, and you used it with your charity and raising money for charity, if I remember correctly, and the fact that you did your research within your Twitter audience, and you looked at when you just sent out the cold tweets, and you found that the people who were the ones who were giving more money were the people that you'd met offline at all the conferences and the gatherings and all this sort of stuff. So what you're doing is you're nurturing that very engaged audience who's moving your content, and you further nurtured that relationship offline. So I mean, it's music to my ears what you're saying there, Thomas, because it's I think everything that you're saying, Mark, right? I mean, it's
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lot of I've got a title of a blog post that I wrote that I'm not going to run, but it's like business is built on relationships. Duh. There's a lot of people out there making a lot of publicity about how it's important to build relationships on business, for business benefits on social media. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's been since medieval marketplaces in Europe. I mean, you buy from who you know and trust. And through social media, we have this extraordinary and historically important opportunity to do that over again. We've been disconnected from people for 100 years because we're broadcasting and advertising. And now we have this incredible opportunity to reconnect in an emotional way. And it's like, okay, I mean, like, this is some revelation that, business is built on relationships. It's not rocket science. The businesses that can build those human relationships and connect people with people, that's the killer app. Those are the ones who are going to win in the long term. It's difficult. It may be, resource intensive, but that's, at the end of the day, what people have always wanted. And everybody says, well, social media changes everything. It doesn't change everything. People have been the same. This is what they've always wanted. It's just elevating these core values and these core desires that have always been there.
Do you know, actually, that's a really interesting point, because it's something that I use a lot in some of the speeches that I give about marketing, and in particular social marketing. And I just say, and I relate it back to sales and revenue generation, because a lot of people that I deal with ultimately will always ask that question, well, where's my ROI? What can I do with all this? And I just say, look, sales and revenue generation are as a result of human interaction. And they are. There's no doubt about that. But it's the very mechanism by which we get that human interaction which is changing.
That's exactly right. I mean, the analogy is, in sales, a lot of people go to networking meetings. They may go to an industry conference. What's the ROI of that? Okay, the ROI may not show up for months or years of these networking meetings, but that's the more accurate analogy. We need to connect social media with, as an analogy, to a live networking event rather than advertising. That's a mindset that companies, unfortunately, we know advertising, we love advertising, we're comfortable with advertising. They're comparing the value of social media to advertising. You need to compare the value of social media with networking. That's the more accurate economic consideration, I think.
Absolutely.
Comparison.
It was only this morning when I was asked a question by somebody who said, yeah, but what's my ROI? And I'm saying, well, that's return on investment, right? So obviously most people will know that. And it's like, there's two more facets which are coming out now in this world, which is the return on engagement and the return on relationship. And they are slightly more fluffy, but the point is they are all valuable in their own right. And that is where social media marketing, it adds value to that. To pick up what a comment that Thomas has just put in the chat here, which is a clout score is like an ATP tennis ranking or a golf handicap. Can't argue with that at all. I'm very conscious of time. We're just coming to the last couple of minutes, but I just wanted to mention something which I picked up in your book, which was a quote from Chris Brogan, because one of the things that you do so aptly in the book there, Mark, is that you're curating an awful lot of advice, a lot of tips about generating great content and using it to be able to move and finding those influences. And one of the things that Chris Brogan says is find allies, not fans. And that for me is basically, in a sense, I suppose, Thomas, what you've done, which is you've got these influential people and you've made them allies of your content, and as they become allies of your content, by the very virtue of curating this list of very influential people, they all want to keep on sharing everybody else's content because it's gamifying, I suppose, in some respect, but at the same time, really sort of working that content among that group of allies, and it's a perfect. It's like it is like the rocket fuel for that content ignition that we're talking about, which Mark has so aptly put. So you guys together are just, I mean, it's a brilliant combination. I didn't really explain that particularly well there. I just went off on a little tangent, but there you go. It made sense to me in my head. I think too fast. It's shocking. But look, one thing I just want to finish on, because we mentioned the term badass at the start of this show, and I think we need to finish off with the very virtue of what badass is. And I'm just going to bring this in, and Mark, maybe you can just bring it through. So this is where the content code takes over. Content that rises and is discovered through search is a mixture of art, science, and magic that includes these 6 factors known as badass. Can I put you on the spot and get you to list them all off, Mark? I think I've got
Sure.
them.
Well, this is the result of, I studied this for about a year and a half, what are the strategies we can employ to ignite our content. And so I'm pretty sure I've got it all covered, and there's 6 possible strategies. And so I discovered that the first letter of each strategy spelled out badass, which was by far the greatest professional achievement of my life, that I had literally created a badass strategy. And I literally thought, I should just stop writing right now. I will never do anything this great ever again. So very quickly, B is for branding. In this world of information density, branding is more important than ever. And I write about creating the heroic brand that transcends content, SEO, social media. People share content because they believe in you. Really has nothing to do with the content. A is audience, specifically the alpha audience that James referred to, the bedrock of the business, the people who are actually moving the content. D is distribution, advertising, promotion, and SEO. I grouped this together because it's the only one of the 6 that really requires a financial investment, a significant financial investment. But I also create a new context for this of what is the real role of promotion, advertising, and SEO in the context of moving content. The next A is authority, which is site authority. Sometimes content moves. Sometimes it's not the most powerful content that moves. It's the most powerful website. We need to be aware of that and how to either address it or get around it. Where are we? The next S is social signals and social proof. Sometimes content moves because it's got a high number. This article has been tweeted 2 times. This article has been tweeted 250 times. I'm going to move this article because it's been tweeted 250 times, and that's the only reason. The last S is shareability. I've got 2 chapters in the book that talk about how do we remove every possible obstacle to make our content more shareable. How do we nurture our content through this network? It's a big chapter. It's an important chapter, and that's badass.
And as Thomas has so kindly labeled you, you're now Mark Badass Schaefer.
I've been called worse.
Well, I think, to be brutally honest, I'm going to end it on that, because as far as I'm concerned, that really is right at the top end of learning how to work your content, learning how to use the content. And you know what? This has been a bit of a strange show. This is not our normal midweek marketing mix where we're literally just absolute fired worth of a load of news coming in and talking about it and what's going on. Partly because we've got the guys of Thomas and Mark coming in here talking about this stuff, because it's so valuable for me, and I hope for everybody out there, because this sort of stuff, you know what, when you read those books and the content code and the return on influence, which I also highly recommend because it all links up with this, get in touch with Thomas on Twitter, Mark on Twitter. So Mark W. Schaefer, I think it's at Mark W. Schaefer if I'm correct, at Thomas Power, at Penny Power. These guys are at the top of their game in terms of the clout stuff, in terms of the influence and return on influence. It's absolutely unbelievably worthwhile connecting up with them and just finding out what they're doing, especially on that book side. Cara, thank you for your time as ever. You are most undoubtedly the most organised person I've ever met in terms of this show. Really, your efforts are very much appreciated on all of this stuff. So thank you, Cara, for all of that.
Thanks, James. Your show is amazing. I love watching it, and I love being a guest. And your guests are always just amazing. How you get so many amazing people to come on your show? You must be the most charming person when you reach out.
No, I just give them a lot of money, and I beg and I plead. And I try and organise, but no, I mean, genuinely, you know, this is what it's all about. For me, this show is all about, you know, teaching me, and I hope in the process it's teaching everybody else as well. And for me, you know, the likes of Thomas and Mark, I hope every one of you learn from each other, because I certainly do. I learn off of Cara, and that's the whole point of all of this. So that's where we are. So look, just want to say, what have we got? We've got Cass saying here, I'm a big fan of actionable advice in books, and Mark Schaefer's book is very actionable. Just go and buy it, so we can't argue with that.
Yeah, thank you.
She's great. What do we got? Lee Rickley, got to run, guys. Thanks for loads of quality content in there. Zara's coming in here. Thanks, James Disney, you need to run. Sorry about that, Zara. catch up on the end. So look, that's what it is. That's what the Midweek Marketing Mix is all about. It's back in 2 weeks' time, and I will get an overview to all of you very, very soon to sort of tell you about what's going on. In the meantime, definitely link up with Thomas, link up with Mark, link up with Cara on the social networks, because they are, as I always do on this show, I always get my influencers on this show to talk to you about what's going on out there, and that's what this is all about. So I want everybody who's joined us on here, I want to thank you for coming on, and to these guys on here, I'm going to stop the broadcast. So we'll go I'm live. So thanks, everybody. That's great.